Welcome to the Back Porch, everybody. My name is Brandon. I'm your host, and I have today with me my two regular co-hosts, Matt and Peter. Good to see you guys.
Good to see you too, Brandon.
Yeah, pleasure to be here as always.
We are today, listeners, if this is your first time listening, you're listening to the Signpost Inn podcast, and today we're talking about gratitude because should be around Thanksgiving time that this episode comes out. Now, look, I know that when I hear about episodes about gratitude, I typically skip them because it's like, really? You're just going to tell me I have to be thankful for stuff? And I'm going to be honest, don't skip this episode. It's not that kind of an episode. We're actually going to dig into some pretty interesting things about gratitude. And I think you're going to be a little surprised, honestly. So stay tuned. Before we jump into our topic for today, however, I do have a couple of quick announcements to make. The first one is we are in the middle of our end of year matching fund drive. So if you have enjoyed any episode from our past, if you are a fan of what we're doing, helping people lift their gaze from the chaos of life, fix their attention on Jesus, find connection with God. If you're a fan of that, we would love you to join our team and help us continue to do that. We have generous donors who have offered to match up to $10,000 worth of donations. So now is the time to give. You can double your giving simply by going to signpostin.org/donate, and that'll take you right to a page where everything you give will be doubled. Please help us out. Continue to do this work. We don't charge anything for the episodes. We don't charge anything for our email. We want to give away stuff because we believe that people need a deeper connection with the true God, Jesus. So would you please help us continue to do that? signpostin.org/donate. Up until I think it's December 28th, everything you give will be doubled. So that's up there. Please join us. I also want to announce that at the time of the airing of this show, you can get Christmas gifts for your friends and family from our web store, signpostin.org/store. Buy Leave and I's book, buy my previous book, and for a limited time during this Christmas buying season, if you use the code no shipping, we will give you everything without shipping costs. So you can get it cheapest of anywhere at our store, signpostin.org/store. Use the code no shipping, all one word, and you will get your order with free shipping. So that's to help you. We'd love buy the book, buy Leave and I's new book, Not Home Yet, for somebody who you know would love it, and we'll ship it to them for you for Christmas. It'd be a great Christmas gift. Okay, jumping into our episode, we're segue, right? We're going to talk about gratitude. Christmas is coming around the corner. It's Black Friday. People are buying gifts and thinking about other people. Updates from the back porch to get to know each other. What's on your Christmas wish list, guys? What are you hoping Santa will bring to you?
Well, I guess I can go first because my wife and I have already got our Christmas gift, which seems not how you should do it, but we're going back east for Christmas. My whole side of the family is going to be gathered at my parents for, I think close to a whole week that we're all going to overlap, which is really exciting. That's a true gift. We're very grateful for that. But one of my brothers kind of got the gang together and was like, we should all go to a Washington Commanders football game while we're all back, which, if anyone knows, those aren't cheap. It's not cheap to be able to attend an NFL game, but our team has been so bad for like the 2 or 3 decades of my life. We have hope this year. And so there's a lot of excitement in my family and stuff. And so Rachel and I were like, yeah, we'd love to be able to do that. We can't just be like, all right, let's do that. So we're like, but this would be a great Christmas gift to be able to go do that with our family. Like that would be awesome. So it's taking up most of our Christmas budget. And with the rest of it, we got like fan gear that's what we'll wear to the game. So we've got most of our Christmas gifts already, at least we know what they're going to be. But I'm really looking forward to that. That's going to be an awesome time. It's in the middle of December, so we could be freezing our butts off, but I think it's going to be a lot of fun and great time with family. And it's been a really long time since I've been to a game. So I'm looking forward to that.
Matt, what do you got on your list?
I'm at that age where if I want something, I kind of just go ahead and get it, which is not great for my loved ones, and I'm also this is my dad's tendency, and so I inherited it from my dad of if you need something, just get it. But then also the idea of I don't if it's not practical, it's not worth getting. So as I'm thinking about this idea, there's two things that I can think of that are something that I would love, but I'm probably not gonna buy for myself just
Mm,
because they're frivolous, right? One of them is a pro Nintendo Switch controller for video
mm.
games because I have a little Nintendo Switch. I play occasionally, but I've noticed that when I'm playing Minecraft, I get killed by creepers all the time because I can't actually hit them with my bow because the sticks just aren't that good. And I've been told, like, "Well, get a pro controller, it's way better." And I'm like, "Okay, maybe one day." The other one is a new chair. So I'm in this office chair. I've literally had this for like 15 years. And
Mm.
there's missing screws here and there. It makes funny sounds, and it's not all that comfortable anymore. It's actually held up really well when you think about how long I've had it. But I definitely could use something that's a little bit better. But again, if you start looking at office chairs, they are ridiculous, like
Yeah.
$500 plus. And
Yeah.
it's like, for as little as I sit in this chair, no,
Yeah.
that's stupid. Those are just like wish list items that I would never necessarily get for myself.
Matt, what if you get a gaming chair and the pro controller? This is the two
No,
for.
that's those chairs are so cheap, and I'm not even sure though they look that comfortable because I look at the way they're designed, and I'm like, that looks like a bad airplane chair with lights. Like, I'm not gonna sit in that. That looks horrible.
I
I'm not a
love that.
teenager. I am not a teenager.
Oh, that's funny. I think you're right about that though. So, let's see. On my list, I always have a hard time. I'm a little bit like you, Matt, in that my desires definitely run more towards the practical, which always presents a problem for my family trying to purchase for me because they wanna buy fun, nice things that I'll enjoy, and I'm like, "I don't want any of that stuff. I want everything I want costs like $300 or more because it's always like something that I want really would use." Top of my wish list, believe it or not, right now is have you seen the new Kindle Scribe? That one that's being released on December 4th?
Mm.
Um,
I've
it
heard about it.
yeah, I wanted one of those e-ink tablets for a long time to replace my notebooks that I have scattered everywhere, and I know, Peter, I'm, like, stabbing Peter's eyes right now.
No,
And
you
analog
can't.
leader.
Yeah.
And I've never none of them have been the right thing. They're all too expensive. They all have limitations that I don't like. But the new Kindle Scribe has kind of solved 90% of the problems that I've had with all the previous ones. Number one, it's a Kindle, which I don't love ebooks, but if I do read ebooks, I hate the way they take notes in on a Kindle. And the new Kindle Scribe has solved it where you can take inline notes on books with your pen, which is pretty darn cool. That's the biggest one. And so and then also you can do all the other notebook notebooky things. I love that. So I want that. It's a little expensive. I kind of want the middle of the road one. So it's probably too expensive for me, but I want it. And then like on the low end, man, I don't know. Like I always have a hard time with that. My wife is gonna be frustrated at me again for not being able to answer this question and not being able to buy me anything. I always get like a jar of olives, which is great. That's a good one. You can't go wrong with a big jar of olives for me. I'm happy.
Kalamata olives.
I don't no. There's like these big jars of mixed olives. They have all kinds of different I love those. Or a bottle of whiskey. You can't go wrong with a good
Yeah.
bottle of whiskey. So that's what she tends to do. Anyway, listeners, if you desire to buy Matt or Peter or I anything off our wish list, uh reach out. I'll send you an Amazon link. Anyway, so talking about all of that, we're going to talk about gratitude. Peter, I think you kind of have maybe an intro for us, an intro line. I don't know. I'm going to put you on the spot without telling you I
Yeah.
was going to put you on the spot.
Sounds like fun. So yeah, obviously this idea came up because it's like Thanksgiving, literally in the name of the national holiday, Thanksgiving, and gratitude and stuff. So here's the word association game that my brain went on is like Thanksgiving, turkeys, right? Turkeys are a big part of most people's celebration of Thanksgiving. Turkey is a type of bird. Birds remind me of Wingspan, the board game. The Wingspan reminds me of playing Wingspan at the staff retreat with Matt, Matt and Holly, they brought it. And that experience of that weekend on the staff retreat reminded me of Matt standing out on the back porch up there with binoculars looking at birds because Matt had told me how as him and Holly got into the game of Wingspan, they naturally started noticing more of the birds around them and subsequently got kind of into birding. And so I got a little taste of that weekend. It was very fun. I was trying to remember, Matt, exactly what bird it was. It was like the Townsend something thing that we saw out there and a robin.
Yeah, there were
But
some good ones. Y'all have some great birding up there. There were some good ones. Yeah, the Townsends, I can't remember what it was. Townsend something. It was the most common one we saw.
yeah.
But Holly was most thrilled about the Stellar's jay because she had never seen one before. They're basically blue jays that decided they wanted to be ninjas. But
That sounds so cool.
they're black from the head to about mid body, and then it transitions into blue. So they're very beautiful, but they're a lot like blue jays. So yeah, that was a great trip. Logged a
I
few
just love
birds.
that your free association goes from Thanksgiving to birding with Matt on the back porch.
Right. But here's where the idea is like once I did that trip, I was like, wait, but they're kind of actually connected because so often gratitude feels like this thing that we have to do, right? You want to be a grateful person, but it's like, how do you just be more grateful? But we've been talking a lot in various pieces of content and stuff about this idea of you see more of what you attend to, right?
Mhm.
And it's just this natural process that happens. The things you're interested in, you start seeing them all over the place, right? And so I thought about this progression of my own self on that staff weekend of like playing the game, and then I was seeing these birds everywhere. And even since, whenever a bird flies by, I'm like, do I know that one? I'm not that into it yet, but like my attention has been drawn in. I'm seeing more of it, and I'm curious about how that idea of like what we attend to kind of draws us in. We see more of it. We notice more of it, how that relates to this concept of gratitude, not so much as this coerced, forced, I ought to be more grateful, but about when we attend to things that are true, good, and beautiful, how we see more of that and that gratitude, springs up. So
Yeah.
I hope that's actually a legitimate connection and a good way to segue into our conversation. But
I really think it is a good connection. Like a super good connection. Just even from my own experience with gratitude. But I do want to start by saying what you were talking about, the like gratitude not being something that, be grateful, dang it. That is why I would have turned this episode off had I been a listener
yeah,
a while ago. Because my encountering of people talking about gratitude is mostly kind of in the secular world where it's either the polite response. I sent you guys 2 articles by Kurt Thompson, which we'll link to in the show notes because they're really worth reading. But he points out that around Thanksgiving time, right, we've just been through Halloween. And what is the thing that parents always say when you get candy? They say, "What do you say?" And everybody has to say, "Thank you." That's the number one experience I have with gratitude, which is I suck because I haven't said thank you. And somebody did something nice for me, and you should be more grateful. That's like my number one experience with it. My number 2 experience with it is from the mindfulness category, like where the power of gratitude stuff. And because of the spiritual direction world in which I live, and there's so much like connection to there's a lot of, you hear a lot of mindfulness stuff in this kind of work that we do. And in that realm, gratitude is like a life hack. It's like, here's how you feel better. Practice gratitude. And there's all these studies about like what gratitude has done, what it does for our mental health. And et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I did a fun, quick, what are the mental health benefits of gratitude before we started. I won't read them all, but it's like they've done a bunch of studies and it's increased serotonin production, right? You have better, and those are the chemicals that help fight depression. Dopamine release, which is the pleasure chemical and is the reward pathway chemical. So gratitude gives your brain the reward signal, so your brain wants to do more of it. Improved sleep, better immune system, better neuroplasticity and adaptability, so you're more able to encounter difficult situations. Okay, yada, yada, yada. All of which is wonderful and true. I'm not trying to downplay any of that. That's really great. However, when gratitude is like the life hack to get those things, to me, I've always been like, I don't know that we're talking about the same thing. Like, I could be very wrong about this, and I think in some sense I am, but like, in a purely secular environment, isn't gratitude just another name for positive thinking? And isn't positive thinking ultimately really stupid and inauthentic if there is no, as you said, Peter, true, good, beautiful stuff out, objectively true, good, and beautiful things, and meaning and purpose and eternity? Because if at the end of this whole process I die and it's all over, and there's nothing else after it, then there's nothing really actually to be grateful for, is what I always think. So that's why I would have turned this episode off, because I'm always like, you're either just going to tell me to be more grateful, or you're just going to tell me to think positively. And I'm like, bah.
Well, that's not a very positive spin on this episode, Brandon. I think
I'm not very grateful
Wow.
for gratitude, Peter. I'm not very
Wow.
grateful for gratitude.
Dark. Very dark.
However, that's kind of the problem that we face.
I'm definitely tracking with you, because you do hear a lot of popular level discussions of, oh, well, the best life hack right now is this gratitude idea. And it's like, if it's not actually genuine, can you actually enjoy the benefits that these people are talking about? Like the actual research that says this is what gratitude, this is how it impacts your life. But if you're literally just going to it as a life hack, does it really work? How long can you fool your own brain into saying,
Right.
I'm going to get the benefits by pretending to be thankful?
Well, that's the other thing. Is it really gratitude if I'm doing it because I get all these wonderful benefits from it? You know what I mean?
That's super fascinating. The idea of like, can you actually be grateful if there's nothing to be grateful for? In that sense, you're not attending to reality. You're deluding yourself. It's an illusion. I have heard a lot of academic conversation in the apologetics world around how Christianity is just a crutch for people, right? That's the criticism, right? It's just this thing you do to make yourself feel better because there's no God, actually. You just want to think there is so that your life has meaning and purpose, right? And, that's an interesting line of argumentation. We could dive into that. But I'm seeing that as compared to this sort of secular idea of gratitude. It's like, if it's all just empty, void nothingness of like, there's not actually anything good, true, or beautiful. You're just dreaming it up or imagining it or, deluding yourself. It's just an emotional crutch so that you feel better, which extremely understandable.
I mean, compassion for those people who are convinced there's no meaning or purpose to life, finding some way of coping. Brother, I hear you. I see you. Have no shame. What I would want to say is, dude, I hope for your sake, I hope there's more. And I want to offer more because I see you. There's a flip side to this though, too, Peter, which is the, parents saying to the kid at Halloween, what do you say? Which is fine to do. I said it this Halloween. I'm not saying we should teach people to be grateful.
Right.
You have to teach them to be grateful. However, in the popular Christian context, I think gratitude, insofar as it's even thought about, is thought about as sort of a obligation you give for the transaction, like you're part of the bargain, right? So God does something for you, you have to respond with thanks. And I'm not saying anybody's really ever said it this way. It's just the way I experience it often in the very surface level of Christianity. And I think a lot of children in Christianity, without much thought, gets a similar experience. It's like, God is good and he's done good things for you, but it's sort of the like wagging of your finger, but you better be grateful. Your job is to be grateful. Your obligation now is to be grateful, which in my mind destroys the gift. It's no longer a gift. I'm not saying that gratitude is not the proper response, but I am saying that if it's an obligation, if it's a transaction, if it's you have to be grateful because God did this, then it's not really a gift, is it? God hasn't really done it for you, has he? Like, if I give you a gift with the requirement that you send me a thank you card, is that really a gift?
Or you get your name put on a brick or a plaque in the new library.
Yes. I will say that if you want to donate $500,000 to Signpost In, we will definitely put your name on a brick. I agree, Matt. I totally agree, right? Like, if you give a gift with an expectation of return, it's not a gift. But I think my experience with gratitude in Christianity has often been the impression, it's never been explicitly said, but the impression is gratitude is my paying back what God has done. And I think, especially in light of the articles, again, that we'll link, that sort of it sours what gratitude is really about and the relationship I have with the person.
Yeah. Well, it's making a lot of sense to me in this framework, right? We talk about the positive side of you see more of what you attend to, right? You get drawn in. But as soon as the obligation piece comes in of like, well, what do you say? What I'm attending to is not, oh, right. Wow, this was a great gift. It's, oh, right. I'm not a grateful person because I needed to be reminded to do that. And then this downward spiral of what do I start seeing more and more? I'm not a grateful person. Or, it's this like dark, introspective, selfish. We start attending more to the fact that I'm not very grateful. I'm the type of person who needs to be reminded, oh, here I am again. I'm not grateful, rather than being like, hey, do you see that awesome gift?
Mm-hmm.
Right. And like, so the very fact of like the obligation is required, like it immediately seems to be pulling us away from, as Kurt Thompson calls, like that relational aspect of that. And it's no longer, I'm only just thinking about myself now and about how I'm not a very grateful person.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just pulling me farther away from like genuine responding with like, I really appreciate this.
Mm-hmm. I experienced that too. I also experience that what I started tending to is the unkindness of the person who gave the gift. So both of those things are where my attention runs. Like, I distinctly remember this as a child because I remember, I mean, we need to parse this out a little bit and be careful because it is perfectly good and right and proper to teach your children to be grateful, right? You need to teach them to.
Yes.
Like teach them to say thank you for sure as a social grace, as a social thing. But I distinctly remember being forced, quote unquote, to write thank you cards for things. And I don't think my parents or even the people I wrote the thank you cards ever were thinking this. But because of my personality, I somehow associated that as being my duty and obligation and response. And like, I was thinking about the person who gave the gift as being like, oh, so they're going to be mad at me if I don't write a thank you card. And that kind of soured me on them. Again, I'm not casting blame on anybody who forced me to do that or the social thing that does that. I think it's wise and good and right in many ways. I'll just say that's where my attention went. My attention went to, golly, if I don't write a thank you card, they're going to be offended. Ugh. What kind of person are they?
So I guess that is what it's doing is pushing me to like boil it down and get down in kind of the meta question of like, well, where does gratitude actually come from? And something that's actually occurring to me is it's never in the moment, right? Because I remember as a kid getting birthday gifts and I'm thrilled by like the thrill is in the gift. It's like, this is cool. I'm thrilled. And that's how I experience like, sure, I'm grateful, but all of my attention's on the gift at the time. But then when I reflect on the things that I'm really genuinely grateful for, it's always kind of a looking back type thing. Like, so I think about, I'm very grateful to my parents for my whole life that they've spent on me. But I wasn't grateful for that until my 40s. Here's where I'm going with all of it. What if an essential aspect of gratitude is not the gift itself, but rather the impact that the gift has on developing and securing that relationship? Like, somebody has given so much to me, and therefore I love them. It's not necessarily about what I've been given, but when I look back, I'm like, they're so generous. I owe so much to them. Like, that, it definitely is, the gift is the inciting event or the catalyst, but what I'm grateful for is the relationship.
Hmm.
Does that make any sense?
Well, I don't know if you got a chance to read the article, Matt, but here's what Kurt
No.
Thompson says.
Sorry.
No, it's perfect. He says, the things we are given or the actions taken on our behalf for which we are grateful are ultimately, like all good and beautiful things, proxies for relationships. Which is exactly what you're saying.
Yeah.
I think you can experience gratitude in the present moment, but I think you're right, Matt. There's something self-reflective about gratitude. There's a reflective quality to it that requires seeing that proxiness of the gift or action in relation to me and the person. And so while I can come back and be grateful in a moment with, like I can go to my parents and feel great gratitude. Thank you for everything you did for me.
Mhm.
But there has to be that reflective. Like, I loved what you said. It's like you saw what they did. Man, I owe them so much. And but that owing doesn't feel like an obligation. It's just it's just a recognition of truth. Like, without them, I would not be here. Without them, I would not be who I am. Yeah. And so in a sense, like what I'm hearing is what I'm really grateful for, whether you give me a gift or whether it's, a lifelong love of a parent, what I'm really grateful for is that connection and relationship I have. You have said to me, I'm valuable to you. You have said to me, I'm worth sacrificing for. You have said to me, you're committed to me. I'm really grateful for that, for you at that point. It's the person.
Yeah. An actual gift reveals the heart of the giver in that
Yeah.
sense. It's
Wow.
the thing you're grateful for is the type of person they are. You said it, Matt, like, wow, you're that, like, you're generous. Like, it shows you that person. That for me, and this might be a little tangential, but like a true gift, an actually free gift that somebody gave to you for you because they thought of you, right? Like that's impactful and meaningful, and it prompts gratitude because you're like, wow, they're the type of person that thought about me. They know me well enough. They care, like, right? Like, those are the things that, like, I feel warm inside because I'm like, oh my gosh, my wife knows me. Like, oh, I feel seen, like, and all those are relational words, right? That's what I'm grateful for, that relationship.
Hmm.
And I'm thinking about our experiences as we've been talking about whatever it is growing up, getting things and being forced to write cards or whatever it is. But I think there's this idea of these seasons, mandatory seasons of gift giving, where the filter is this a gift or is this just a social obligation that you had to get me something? We don't need to critique the culture of the seasons of giving. It's a very interesting concept, though. A lot of times the experience is we'll go over to this person's house for these holidays and we'll do this or that. And I receive a very general, like, oh, there was like a neat something that I thought was cool and
So,
maybe you do too. And it's like, that wasn't a gift for me. That was a neat item. And then the feeling of like, oh, I should be grateful for that. But yeah, that gift didn't show me anything about their heart other than they're kind of fulfilling their social bargain. I don't
yeah.
know if this is a fruitful thing. This is
This is okay. So here's what it made me think, Peter, at first. This is really worth parsing out because there's some really deep and important things here. The first one is I have identified why I am uncomfortable with the language of practicing gratitude. And yet, we can't lose the language because it's so important. One of the reasons I don't like the idea of practicing gratitude let's say, for example, in the social or secular world, is because of what we said earlier. If what I'm doing is consciously choosing to be grateful for things that aren't gifts, just so I can have some mental health benefits, that's inauthentic. 2, if there are no real gifts, then I can't have gratitude, really. So there's no real sense in which, like, I can't really practice it. I can't even choose to practice gratitude in some important sense because there have to be gifts first, right? Gratitude is a response, not something I choose to do first.
Mhm.
Okay. So that's part of it. Like, let's make that distinction. And if I focus on gratitude in that sense, then I'm always going to wind up with a kind of a legalistic, law heavy, damning kind of thing and transactional relationships. On the other hand, when there are real gifts, we can practice gratitude and even learn it and grow in it. And I think that's the best intention behind making me write thank you cards, was the intention to like teach me that there were real gifts and to notice those real gifts and be grateful for them because of what that means about the relationship I have with those people. And I think that was the real intention behind saying, Brandon, you need to write these thank you cards. I think that's the real intention behind setting aside times in the church year for practicing gratitude, because there are real gifts that have been given and are continuing to give. And if we don't notice it, we're missing out. You
Mhm.
see more of what you attend to. And so we do need to teach our fallen, broken hearts. We do need to teach our children
Yes.
to see the gift and feel the gratitude for the gift. I think the distinction is to be careful about teaching with the rituals, with the regular seasons set apart, rather than focusing on you need to be grateful. It would be helpful if we focus on the greatness of the gift. Like, really, let's use Thanksgiving as a time not to teach people you need to be grateful, but to list all the real gifts that are given to us and really enjoy them and celebrate the gifts and talk about the gifts. And in that sense, I think for somebody like me who's now not a child anymore, I can make a quote unquote spiritual discipline of gratitude, not because it's going to give me some benefit necessarily, but because I can recognize within myself my inattention to
Mm.
all the gifts that God has constantly given me and practice
Mhm.
having greater attention on that. Right? That's like noticing the bird. There's a daily gift from God everywhere, all the time. It doesn't
Mm.
demand my gratitude, but I can notice, man, I have not been paying attention.
Mm.
I'd like to pay more attention to the goodness and beauty and kindness of God.
Well, and so you saying that, it immediately makes me think of one of the here's a tip for practicing, experiencing, noticing gratitude more is don't focus so much on what you don't have. Because I like one of the reasons why people don't notice birds is because their attention is on what they've got to do. Like I've got to get to the store. So when I walk into the grocery store, I notice a lot of birds. A very common bird around here is a grackle. And grackles love grocery store parking lots because there's a lot of things for them to scavenge. They're not particularly dirty birds, but they're actually kind of pretty. But nobody walking into that store, or I should say probably very few, are thinking about the birds they saw in the parking lot. They're like, "I've gotta get this, I've gotta get the milk, I've gotta get eggs, I've gotta make sure I get this done in time because I gotta pick my kid up at, practice." Yeah, I think one of the things that you're touching on there, Brandon, is part of it is training our attention.
Okay. It's like you wrote the articles that Kurt Thompson.
You're a genius, man.
Oh, I'm glad I didn't waste my time reading them, Brad.
I got it. Okay. I'm going to read you what he said. But like, honestly, I think you said it better. Okay. Because he's more wordy. But here's what, like you just
Mhm.
nailed it. Here's what he says. This is in his second article. He says, it's not hard to be grateful when I'm receiving what I want, but what if I want things, Okay. So he says, the fact is, no matter how good my life is, my attention is easily drawn to that which makes me anxious or ashamed. I can easily become distracted from my intention to make connection with others. Moving at the speed of modernity, I make it difficult for me to remain in the present moment, to recognize the opportunity in which the Spirit of God is inviting me more deeply into relationship, no matter how brief that moment may be. Hence, it's easy for me to automatically say to the grocer in the checkout lane, and even mean it at some level, and keep right on moving with little conscious recognition that I have thanked him. It's when I'm willing to be present in the moment long enough that I can actually give thanks to someone else, that I can give it such that it can actually be received. And he actually then goes on to say that he sometimes gives people the assignment of going back to a grocery store or other store they've been in and finding the person that helped them and intentionally saying thanks to them later. And he's like, that's the sacrificial nature of gratitude. So he's making the connection to the thank offering in the Old Testament. It's a sacrifice in that we're taking out time. We're pausing long enough to actually recognize the gift. And I like, Matt, that's exactly what you're talking about. Like, pause long enough in the grocery store parking lot. Give up for just a moment your to-do list to be grateful for the bird that you see. I think important to also point out that's not an obligation. You don't have to do that. It's not a requirement. But the more you do it, the more good things you're going to see, because there are real gifts all around us all the time.
Well, you immediately make me think of a couple of things. One of them is that idea of the sacrificial nature of gratitude is kind of profound, and I'm going to be thinking about that probably for the rest of the day, because that's an interesting thought. But it immediately makes me think of the story of when Jesus heals the group of lepers, and I can't remember the number. Was it 10 lepers, right? He says, okay, go show yourself to the priest. On their way, they get healed. And then one or two come back. And you're right. If you get healed from leprosy, one of the things that you're excited about is to get back to your life. This was a debilitating, life-altering disease. You're healed of it. I can go back to my normal life now. Two of them are moved with gratitude. They come back to Jesus. I guess what I'm saying is you can see it in that story. Before they got back to their life and enjoying the gift, they were mindful of the fact, like, oh, Jesus did this for me. This is huge. I don't know. Does that,
Yeah.
Am I nitpicking too much, or is that?
No, not at all. Not at all. I think that's exactly right. And I think the connection to the Old Testament sacrifice, one of the connections that was made that I thought was on the same level of profundity, is that the Old Testament sacrifice of thanksgiving was never an obligation. Nobody ever had to do it. You freely chose to do it, right? You would make a sacrifice of thanksgiving when you had been healed. But what was interesting is that the sacrifice was that you brought food. It was basically a big meal. It was a Thanksgiving meal is what the sacrifice was. You brought a bunch of food and you shared it with the priests and with other people. And a portion of it was burned up as God's portion, shared with God. And to me, that's like mind-blowing, that like what gratitude often is, it's a celebration of a gift that expands that generosity to other people, right? Like, I have been so blessed by God, I'm going to make a sacrifice, which means take a bunch of my stuff and give it to a bunch of other people. I mean, again, like the two lepers paused and gave up their time. They came back. You know, their sacrifice didn't earn them anything, but man, it was a wonderful praise and glorification of Jesus and sharing of what he did with all the other people around them. Which, you know, this is beautiful because gratitude is a reciprocal part of relationship, right? Like when somebody does something for me graciously and says they love me, and I respond with, I love you too. There's always this kind of like desire to like expand the circle, right? Like, man, all these good things have been given to me. And when I'm really grateful, I sort of want to share it. I want to share the joy. I want to share the party. I want to share the goodness. Maybe that's why we have birthday parties and invite friends, you know? Maybe a way to wrap up, because I feel like there's a thread that's still hanging that we haven't really talked about, or at least I could imagine there being a thread still hanging, which is, it almost feels like the way we've talked about it would make it kind of impossible to teach gratitude or to practice gratitude, because it's like, it's got to be totally organic. You can never tell anybody to say thank you, which I don't actually think is the case. How would we, and I don't know if I have a good answer to this yet, but how how do we wrap that part into it? Like, it is Thanksgiving, Peter,
Yeah.
and there are seasons in the church year and there are seasons in societies where we focus on thanks and gratitude and teaching people to be grateful.
Yes. There is, I think, the desire for something practical here. Not just saying, "Oh, yeah, it's all about this heart, this is spontaneous," but, like, we do have the ability to reflect, to accept the invitation of seeing life as a gift, of seeing the gifts all around us. I'm gonna take a stab at it. I'm just gonna go for it because this has been an experience that I've had recently. So I don't know if this is the structure thing, but I'm just gonna share. For me, practicing feeling gratitude, again, we've talked about the tension with that phrase, but practicing it, the important first step for me has been to acknowledge that life is hard. And that's counterintuitive, but to acknowledge the both and nature of my lived experience in life, to say, hey, this season, that to this day, this moment is both really challenging and a blessing, right? For me, this has been a season of parenthood, has been like putting this into sharp relief because having a son is like at the same time just one of the most wonderful, rich, enjoyable experiences of my life. And at the same time, it's really hard. I've been exhausted. I've been tired and drained. The demands on my time and energy have left me feeling used up, and it's been a real challenge, right? I need to acknowledge both of those things. It has felt artificial for me to try and simply go to, but I just love this, or, oh, I'm so grateful for this, this, and that, without being able to validate and express the highs and lows, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
Another sneaky thing that I recognize myself doing all the time is looking for the next season or the next gift to solve all my problems and usher me into this blissful state of contentedness. And if I'm expecting that from any one thing, gift, season, then like I'm always going to be frustrated. So I think there's acknowledgement that life is very hard and there are gifts all around me. Accepting that I'm never going to escape that. There's never going to be a season where everything's wonderful. It's all blessing and gift. I'm never going to arrive at that place until I take my seat at the marriage feast of the Lamb and go, nothing is needed. There is no pain, suffering, and all that. So acknowledge that, accept that. And for me, I feel like that frees me up then to say, okay, I've acknowledged that there are really hard things. That voice in the back of my head that's saying, this is hard, this sucks, has been acknowledged. It's not gone away or dealt with, and I'm not expecting it to, but it's been validated. And now I can also hear the blessing, the voice saying, Peter, isn't it just wonderful to sit here in this dark nursery trying to get your son to sleep and he's all warm and cozy against you? And yeah, you're tired and he's almost putting you to sleep, but you need to get back to work. But just, don't you feel warm and cozy and wonderful? And it's like, yeah, I do.
Mm.
Like, this is like, wow, this is like, how neat is it? I'm not going to be able to hold my son in my arms forever.
Mm-hmm.
This moment is a gift. And like this specifically, like, especially these last couple of days with the snow days, I've been working more from home and I've had more of those opportunities. And it's just been like, oh, what a precious moment.
Mm-hmm.
But I can't arrive there without acknowledging that tension at first.
Mm.
I don't know if that's a step or method or whatever, but that has been integral for me. Being able to attend to the blessings of this season is at first acknowledging that not everything is rainbows and, gummy bears.
Yeah. Yeah. It's like, right.
There's tension.
The goal is not to not feel bad. Gratitude's not the trick to not.
Mm-hmm.
It's part of the process. It's part of the whole thing. Mm.
Yeah.
I want to riff on that briefly, Peter, because I think you've
Yeah.
got something very insightful there. My mind is running to the teaching of gratitude. I keep coming back to that childhood experience of myself of, again, I'm just going to acknowledge it's probably my own personality that when I was taught to be thankful, I interpreted it wrongly. But so to me, one of the practical questions to answer is, during this season of Thanksgiving, if I have children or people that I'm teaching about being grateful, what do I do? How do I do that?
Mm-hmm.
And my thoughts right now are maybe a different angle would be helpful. Rather than, what do you say? Or now we all say thank you. What if, and I'm going to try this with my own kids, what if we took time, in our sermons and our sitting around the Thanksgiving table, in our regular conversations with our children and other people, to begin by talking about the gift, purely the gift, just talking about it, pointing at it. It's sort of like, look at that gift, and engaging in a conversation about the gift itself. What do you like about it? And I am literally imagining this as a conversation with my own children. What do you like about that? Why is it so great? Tell me what you think about it. And in order to first just have that feeling of joy and thrill and excitement about the gift, and then to take a moment of reflection. Man, how does receiving that gift make you feel? I think that's the gratitude. I think as soon as kid says, or some person who's really absorbed with the beauty of a gift and loving the gift, as soon as they pause long enough, and this is Matt's insight, right? There's this like past nature to gratitude. As soon as I pause and reflect, how does it make me feel to have received this gift? Well, I'm going to be feeling gratitude. I may not name it that way, but I'm feeling it. Like, I'm like, wow, that was really neat that somebody gave me that gift. And then even a further final question is, how do you feel about the person that gave you that gift? What does that mean about them? And I think for most of us, the natural progression of, hey, really, let's enjoy this gift together. How do you feel about receiving that gift? How do you feel about the person that gave you that gift? Just those questions will lead to somebody saying thank you, in my opinion. And I wonder if, like, I could imagine a sermon like that around the Thanksgiving time, rather than what we typically, the easy route is, let's talk about being thankful. What if you never used the word thankful or gratitude in your Thanksgiving sermons? What if you only ever talked about the gift, invited people to reflect on what they think about it and how it makes them feel, and invited them to reflect on what it means about Jesus and what they feel about him? And I think you do a lot more teaching about being grateful and training your attention to be grateful than even using the word thankfulness.
Mm.
That's my challenge, by the way, if you're a pastor or a teacher. Try to do a lecture or a sermon that teaches people to be grateful and thankful, but never use the words gratitude and thankfulness. I think you'll do better.
Mm-hmm.
That's a trick, by the way, from the old teaching book. Like, that used to be a challenge I would set myself.
Interesting.
When I was teaching high school kids in school. What it forced me to really understand the nature of the topic that I was talking about, rather than use the short-term handles that I have on it. And it really forced me to help somebody grasp or learn a skill or a topic as if I were new to it.
I have tangential thoughts here, but I really need to learn when to cut things off. The way you described that process, reversing the order of things or whatever, to reframe it so that it's I'm attending to the goodness of the thing. I end up wanting to talk about it because I'm like, yeah, I feel so happy. I feel like that it made me excited. And right, it flows, right? You don't say, how would you like to express your gratefulness? Is similar with like evangelism. Tangential thought connection here, but like, go evangelize is sort of that same thing as like, go be grateful. And you're like, I don't know, there's a hitch in my step as I'm like, well, how do I do that? But if it's like, how do you feel about Jesus redeeming you? And like, how do you feel about it? What has he done for you? And it's like, my goodness, the list is endless. And, I talk, and if I'm just ruminating in that positive sense of all that God's done for me and stuff, when you tell somebody about that, like, that's the natural way that flows for me. Just feels so much more of like I don't know, like, oh my gosh, like, yeah, Jesus is incredible. The ways he serves me and benefits me, like, that is such a more fruitful, perhaps to frame it, as you said, of teaching gratitude. That's such a more fruitful way of like teaching of evangelism, maybe.
Mm-hmm.
Again, this is it's tangential, but the process feels the same way of like we put obstacles maybe in our own way when we approach it from a certain perspective. Whereas if we can just tap into that, look at this gift, man, and this is incredible. And it's
Mm-hmm.
like, yes, it is. And like,
Yep.
there's energy there that naturally wants to come out rather than
Yeah.
trying to manufacture that energy or something.
And there's a level at which you can name it for them later so they know that it's gratitude and that can help teach it. And there is even like let's not forget the sinfulness of heart that naturally doesn't want to feel gratitude and so you might have to sometimes instruct more directly, for sure. But I think in the long term it's more effective to invite people to gratitude, create the space for gratitude and let people arrive at it themselves than to demand it or instruct it. And that's kind of the deep insight there. Well, I feel very grateful for this conversation as well. I feel grateful for your friendships, guys. Listeners, before we did this episode, we were chatting about some of the stuff we like about our own podcast. One of the things we all did say we liked is just being able to hang out with each other and talk about ideas. So that I can say I am very grateful for that. It's super fun to have two guys who are willing to just shoot the bull with me about an idea that we had to come into our mind.
Definitely.
It's a lot of fun.
Listeners, we would love to hear from you. We would love to hear thoughts, feedback, really just anything. Just shoot us an email, podcast@signpostin.org. You can also find us on Facebook. We have the Back Porch Facebook group if you want to join that and drop a comment here and there. We'd love to interact with you there. So come and join us. Be a part of the conversation. What do you think about gratitude? What's your experience with it in the past? Has something in this episode changed the way you think about gratitude? We'd love to hear that. Don't forget, we have our end of year matching fund drive going. Every dollar up to $10,000 will get matched by generous donors. Signpostin.org/donate. And you can help us finish out our year strong and start the next year strong as well so that we can keep doing these podcasts for you. So thank you very much for listening. May the grace of Christ go with you wherever the road takes you. Thanks for listening. This podcast is a production of Signpost Inn Ministries, a nonprofit Christian ministry dedicated to strengthening people's relationship with Jesus and walking with them compassionately on their life's journey. We offer spiritual direction, retreats, and lots of other resources like this podcast. Please visit us at signpostin.org to learn more. We especially want to thank our generous donors who support our work and keep this podcast going. If you've benefited from something you've heard, please consider supporting us by making a tax-deductible gift at signpostin.org/donate. We also want to thank Rex Daugherty for creating the original theme music for this podcast. You can check out more of his work at his website, and you can find all the links in our show notes.